Well, hello, everybody. We will go ahead and call this meeting to order. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Agent.
Here.
Clegg.
Here.
Halliburton.
Here.
Sanchez.
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
Woodings.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Next up, we have interim budget changes. But is somebody here on Zoom for interim budget changes? I can only see the council members. Perhaps not.
I don't know.
So looking at these, their budget. I guess what we should just do is just see if anybody has any questions, which is what we do anyway, even if somebody was standing there at the podium. Did anybody have any questions about them? One was streetlight funds for public works, and the other is the library system plan that we discussed in the work session for strategic planning for the system.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I just have a thank you for the people who aren't here to explain these changes regarding the streetlight proposal. I know it's taken them some work, but it's smart and it saves money and it's great, and I'm enthusiastically for it.
Well, I would say we'd pass along your thanks, but I don't think we should because they might be really embarrassed they're not here and that would remind them. So let's just keep it to ourselves.
The thanks. Okay.
We'll know that you thank them. It's noted in the record.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
With that, I would move approval of the FY 2020 interim budget changes for September 29th as presented in the packet.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Woodings.
Yes.
Agent.
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
I vote yes too. I don't think I got called.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Councilmember Thompson.
We're winning today. All right. The next up is our internal audit 2021 work plan. There's Steve. Welcome, Steve.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I hope my audio is coming through.
Yes, you might need to speak up a little bit.
Okay, let me adjust my mic just a bit here.
Getting better already.
Okay, thank you for your time today. Annually, we come for council and propose a work plan for the upcoming fiscal year for the Office of Internal Audit, and that's my purpose here today. For the benefit of some of our newer council members, each year my group performs a risk assessment and looks at the operating profiles for all of the 78 divisions across the city, as well as another half a dozen or so cross-functional type things that we do, like purchasing and P cards, that sort of thing. And we look at basically the financial impact, some of the operational aspects, staffing, legal regulatory environment, and then just items that are of interest to us, to management, to members of the council. And we devise a proposed work plan. The result of that work plan was in your agenda packet today. And basically, we have an array of projects laid out there. Some of them are of interest to management. Certain of them are of interest to council, and that's why they're included particularly on this year's proposed work plan. We discussed with audit committee, and they approved of the proposed work plan on August 12th. So with that, I'd like to stand for any questions that members of council might have, and then seek approval.
Are there questions for Steve?
Madam Mayor. Yeah. Just a few comments. The audit committee did meet and review this. As always with the audit work plan, if something comes up during the year and we need to adjust, we have the ability to do that. it was our determination that this is a good starting point for the year, recognizing that this has been a unique year overall. And Steve and his team have been very nimble in changing direction when we needed them to. This looks like the work that we'll need done in the next year, but as always, if for some reason or another we need to change directions, we certainly have the ability to do that. And I guess with that, Madam Mayor, I would move that we approve the proposed plan for the Office of Internal Audit for FY 2021.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Thompson.
I think he says yes.
Okay, thank you. Woodings.
Yes.
Bajent.
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
I vote yes too.
He's gonna say he didn't get called. TJ, we called you. I think you're
I
not
promise I'm
hearing.
here. Oh, I didn't hear it. Sorry.
So then when you didn't answer, I said, I think he says yes.
Oh, thank you. I apologize.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. We will proceed accordingly.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
You're sure welcome.
All right, and next up, we have Council Member Sanchez's proposed security deposit ordinance. Council Member, you taking it from there?
Sure. Yeah, we're not feeling it today, Mayor. So yes, what we are proposing is a protection for renters, both commercial and residential. As we've learned over the last few years, renters really don't have much protections in our community. And with the rising costs of rent and those very few protections that exist, anything that we can offer to provide security to our renters is greatly needed and greatly appreciated by renters. As you know, I myself am a renter, so I have a very intimate knowledge of what it's like to live in that. I don't even know how to describe that. You just can't anticipate what's going to happen from 1 month to month, even though you might have a lease. So any type of security that you can get, any type of protection is greatly appreciated. So what we've discovered is that there are some areas, there's some gaps where I myself had no idea that security deposits were something that were at risk of being lost by a renter if a property manager or a landlord commingles those monies. If they file for bankruptcy or if they sell the property and there's a transfer of ownership, those security deposits can be lost to the renter. So what we're proposing is to have a protection that's rather simple. It just requires that the property manager, the landlord, hold those monies separate in a separate account to protect those funds. So in case the landlord, the property manager, if they were to have to file for bankruptcy, that those monies would not be discharged because they're going to be held separately. It's my understanding that this particular protection was brought before the Idaho State Legislature in the recent past, but it was part of a larger bill. And unfortunately, there were other parts of that bill that the legislature did not have an appetite for. But this part, actually, they were okay with. But unfortunately, it was lost when that bill was denied. So we are proposing to offer that protection through this security deposit protection ordinance. And I'll stand for questions if anybody has them.
Yeah, thank you. Are there questions or comments, feedback for the council member?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
Councilmember Sanchez, and I guess anybody else who might know the answer to this question, are there similar ordinances that we've seen in different cities, different states that kind of offer some guidelines as far as how you manage that separate account?
You know what? I'm going to defer to, let's see who's on tonight. Is it Mary?
Yep, she says she's talking.
There we go. Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Councilmember Halliburton, to your particular question, I've come in on this a little late in the game. This is a project that was initially a combined effort with Elizabeth Keckeritz and Lisa. In any case, I particularly am not aware of other ordinances of a similar nature. However, in the draft ordinance itself, we do provide guidance as to how those monies should be separated and the expectations that we would have of a landlord as far as how that should be accounted for.
Madam Mayor, Mary, and I guess Councilmember Sanchez, I guess just to follow up with that, what I'm wondering is, because I don't know the bankruptcy side of things very well, I love the idea, and I'm hoping to make sure that if people put those monies aside in a different account and somebody files for bankruptcy, that those accounts would still be safe and that there are methods to make sure that those accounts remain safe in a bankruptcy claim. And I don't know exactly how that works. And so that's, I think, my curiosity.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, we will not preempt any bankruptcy law, but the way that we have provided for it in the ordinance does specify that the ownership is retained with the renter, so that these are housed funds by a landlord, but because they're going to be in a separate account and we provide that the ownership doesn't transfer, I believe that we've provided as many protections from any bankruptcy proceedings as we legally can, and with understanding that federal bankruptcy law will preempt, but I believe we've gone to the extent possible to ensure the protection of those funds.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think it's such a great idea. And that was just my one question and kind of concern.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
I had the same question as Councilmember Halliburton, and maybe it's appropriate to follow up between now and an eventual hearing on this. But the question is, if in a bankruptcy proceeding, those deposits don't belong to the landlord, they wouldn't be swept up in the bankruptcy estate anyway. And it sounds like there's stories where they have been. So the question is, does this ordinance change the character of that money? I mean, it either, when a tenant pays a security deposit to a landlord, it's either the tenant's money or the landlord's money. And it sounds like bankruptcy courts have treated it as though it's the landlord's money. And we're creating this ordinance that says, no, it belongs to the tenant. And the question is, I think it's probably a legal research question, but do we have the authority to do that? Can we change does the city have the authority to change the ownership of that money? If the answer is yes, that's great. And then I'm not sure how effective this is and whether there may be another strategy for it.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Bajent, I certainly can look into that and provide an updated and a memo to council. From my understanding and the extent to which I understand the bankruptcy proceedings, that this isn't necessarily a matter of having dictated or delineated ownership. It's just putting it in there, requiring it that it be separated and siphoned off into its own fund for the purposes of when you have commingled funds, it becomes more difficult to trace how those monies have been spent and what remainder of accounts is left in a bank account, for example. So if you have $200 that was placed into a bank account, and at some point there have been transactions and withdrawals and more deposits, and you still have $200 in that bank account, it's difficult to be able to trace whose that was and whether it was money that was ownership by the landlord or money that was ownership by a tenant. And by requiring that these be housed in a separate fund and accounted for, and with the provision in this ordinance that the landlord would have to provide such an accounting of what funds were deposited, what funds were withdrawn. It's a matter of really providing that tracing aspect rather than really changing ownership. It's just calling it out, making it more direct. But certainly if council would like additional information or legal background on that, I'm more than happy to provide it.
No, I think it just clicked for me. If they're commingled, then the tenant has to file a claim in the bankruptcy that says, hey, my $200 security deposit or my $1,000 security deposit does not belong to the landlord. This is my bankruptcy claim for assets of the estate. And nobody's going to do that. And or few people will do that. And so then the result is that money stays in the estate and gets paid out to creditors. So it doesn't change the character of the money at all. It just makes it much more clear where it's supposed to go. So no memo needed.
And Madam Mayor, Councilmember Bajent, I would absolutely agree with that, and that also it would be the burden of the tenant to prove that those were his or her funds, and I think that would be a difficult threshold to reach as far as tracing.
Fair enough. Madam Mayor, I also had a question for Councilperson Sanchez, if that's okay.
Of course. If the council member will yield.
Oh,
Sure.
wow. What we lack in technical competence we're making up for in formality tonight, I guess. Have you had a chance to talk with and get any feedback from the industry side of things, the landlords associations, the commercial realtors, the people who are on the other end of this ordinance?
I haven't spoken to them directly, but just like the rental application fee ordinance that we worked on last year, I've been collaborating with Representative John Gannon on this. And he is setting up a meeting for me with the association, I think it's of Idaho Realtors, and they are actually very supportive of this. They wanted to see it passed in the Idaho legislature. We're disappointed to see this part of the bill not make it through. So there has been an issue in the past with property managers not being good stewards of that money. And so there is an appetite for it.
Okay, thank you. In my own professional life, I have to segregate funds. I have to maintain trust accounts, and I have to keep rigorous records of who actually owns money that's within my control. And it's onerous and it's a pain, but it's important. And so, I see both sides of this, and I would just be curious to know what those organizations would have to say. I don't have any philosophical problem with it at all. If the money doesn't belong to you, you should keep it separate. It's not yours. But it does add a pretty complex layer of financial tracking to my life, and I assume it will for landlords as well.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Bajent, part of the reason that we're wanting to bring forward this type of protection at this time is because of the economic uncertainty that we're dealing with. And we just don't know how our renters are going to fare. And part of what I liked about this ordinance was also the fact that it does include folks who are in business. And for those smaller businesses that may not make it through, for them to be able to recoup some of their money back in the form of a security deposit, I think would be helpful for them.
Right.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I think this first question is actually a question of Madam Mayor, and that is, I believe that our contract lobbyist did check in with those groups and got an answer that they were generally supportive. Is that correct?
That's something that I would have to throw back to follow up with you. I mean, this is a work session on this just quickly,
Yeah.
and we'll have another go at it. So I don't know the deal of that, the detail of that. Would prefer to check in with Elizabeth or Kathy, who could tell
Sure.
us.
Yeah.
And get back to you.
But
But I imagine because she's been so involved with all of the policy that Councilmember Sanchez and others have been working on this year.
Yeah, thank you. My conversations in preparing for this indicate that in fact did happen, but it would be good to get that report. And then my second question for either Mary or Councilmember Sanchez, the administration of this, I assume, will happen in the clerk's office, and just wondered if we have the capacity, if we've thought about the capacity to ensure that this is being done, and whether or not we also need to think about that and make sure that the staff time is adequately resourced.
I believe that we're looking at that. I know we're trying to keep this in the same vein as we did with the rental application fee ordinance. So I think a lot of this is going to be, I think we're looking, was it 90 days, Mary? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
So we're giving folks plenty of time to act on it.
follow up if I could.
Madam
My
Mayor,
assumption is that in a few cases, at least in the beginning, we will need to follow up and ensure that it's being done and ensure that the landlord community understands how to do it and perhaps even begin that with some education. So I think this is a great idea. I really would like to see it come forward. Just want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that allows the folks who really do want to comply to be able to do that. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're good with this for now. Thank you so much, council member.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, everyone.
And now we have Corey in the chambers to talk about our insurance policy updates. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, council members, thank you for this opportunity to discuss risk management and workers' compensation. There's a couple new council members, so this is probably the appropriate time. Your risk management team, we handle risk management consultations, liability and workers' compensation claims, occupational safety and health, insurance programs, and property loss, employee training. And last few months, we've answered a lot of COVID questions. That has been our world lately. All right, there we go. The city is self-insured for multiple exposures. Workers' comp and liability are just two of those. Currently in workers' compensation, we're self-insured for the first $500,000 for general employees, $1 million for police and firefighters. That means the city has to pay the first $500,000 or $1 million when an injury happens, then excess insurance takes over after that. As of 10/1, we're moving to a $2 million self-insured retention, not out of choice, but that is what is available. And we'll discuss that in subsequent slides. The liability program, we have an SIR of $500,000 with excess insurance up to $10 million, depending on the type of exposure. There's some other exposures that we have insured for different amounts. Airport liability has higher limits and is a deductible program. We insure over or close to $1 billion in property coverage as well. All right, there are two funds, the Risk Management Fund 641 and Workers' Comp Fund 642. These are funded with department premiums. These premiums are influenced by loss history, expected experience, and property values. We utilize actuaries heavily to ensure adequate funding is available for outstanding liabilities and the next fiscal year's expected claims. We target a 90% confidence level. That means that each fund will have, is expected to have adequate funding in 9 out of 10 years. So that's always been our target, and we look to you to affirm that periodically. We review our insurance programs at least annually with our brokers and market the city's coverage annually to ensure we have appropriate coverage at a reasonable cost. What do our injuries look like in workers' comp? This is a typical year, FY20. We have 515 total injuries so far. 322 of those injuries are information only. No medical care was needed. However, we do want to report those so we can make preventative action. 193 claims medical treatment was required. We anticipate, or it's projected, that we will owe roughly 1.3 million for those injuries. And that's a pretty typical year. And that's important later on, that 1.3. Cost of a claim vary wildly, but the average is 6,672 currently. How do we compare with our peers, other entities out there? You can see the graph on the left. That's our excess insurance company has put a matrix together with all their insured entities. And we're that dot, you can see. And it says high frequency, low severity of claims. Not necessarily a bad thing as long as we don't move to the right. That circle doesn't move to the right. We want to know about even the insignificant injuries. And so we facilitate and encourage reporting of all claims. If we know about it, we can do something about it. So that is the key. And our insurance company understands that as well. This is where our injuries are happening by department. You can see the blue is fire, approximately 43% of the injuries, or 219. Police is red at 36% of the injuries. Then you have parks at 7%, public works at 6%. We have airport at 5%, and then it gets DFA at 2%, I believe, and then it gets smaller from there. This is the cost of those, roughly follows the same distribution of those claims. It varies depending on if a department has a more severe claim. And this is our lost days. This is a biggie that we follow and try to track. And you can see this year, because of COVID, this was a tough year, especially for fire. We have an aggressive return to work practice program where we try to get employees back in light duty, because we found that if they're in the workplace, there's a lot of benefits. They heal quicker, and there's a lot of other benefits to that. Because of COVID, we were not able to put employees back into the workplace because we were trying to keep our density in our facilities lower. So that's where you can see that there were 1,500 days out for employees just in fire alone. This shows where the injuries are happening by activity. And you can see training, physical fitness, EMS response, foot pursuits, and suspect handling are high on this list. And you're welcome to interrupt if you have any questions at any time. Sorry about that. Then what are we doing to control these costs? This is a list of just some of the things that we're doing. We have implemented an improved provider network to facilitate communication and reduce treatment costs. We have an aggressive return to work program where we get people back into the workplace in potentially even other departments where it fits. We target early intervention to get our employees the right care at the right time. We use nurse case managers and other available resources to facilitate this. We've also adjusted our philosophy from an employee being a claimant, and this is important to the employee advocacy approach. That's a shift in just the thinking. When you're talking to an adjuster, they think of a person as a claimant. We've changed that and are still working with our adjusters and others to change that to employee advocacy. If we can help our employees, they will heal faster. We utilize data analysis and claim analytics using our own statistics as well as our insurance, and they have a lot of expertise in this to watch for trends and intervene when we see red flags. What are those trends? And this is where it gets a little heavy. We have an increase in employees and payroll, except for this year, and that influences costs. Legislative changes over the last 5 years have had a significant impact on our costs and insurability. In FY16, the presumptive illness bill was passed. This includes coverage for certain types of cancer for firefighters. In FY19, the post-traumatic stress injury bill was passed. We had a severe injury claim in each of FY16 and FY17. Property values have increased and valuations have increased as we build additional facilities and the market improves. SIRs and deductibles have increased to keep premiums low. This is something the insurance companies are doing. They want to not see increases in the rates, and so they give you a higher deductible, and we are seeing this, not just in workers' comp. We've seen in flood insurance, our deductible go in some of our properties that are at risk from the 100,000 flood deductible substantially higher.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
So, Corey, the question I have here, we've always been self-insured on workers' comp and other things. Given the changes in legislation, I know there was a lot of discussion about the few cities, I think there are only 4 in Idaho, who are self-insured, and the impact it was going to have on them because their pool was so small with these 2 pieces of legislation. Have we investigated joining ICRIMP just for this piece of it, and would there be any benefit in doing that?
ICRIMP does the property and liability side. The state fund does the workers' comp. And so
okay.
As you'll see in some other slides, the property and liability, we actually, in some sense, we do actually get quotes for ICRIMP. We actually, through our broker, have gotten quotes, not this year, but the year previous, and they were actually higher than what we get currently. And so we do investigate that regularly.
Okay, and then the state insurance fund on the workers' comp? Are we
Correct.
investigating
We
that?
had some calculations and it looks like approximately 3.4 million, depending and that's first dollar. And that's potentially a sunk, cost. And so we can, right now we pay what was it, 1.3 just about for this year. We have some flexibility, but that is something we're always looking at to see, is that a better deal?
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Madam Mayor,
Go ahead.
just some clarification on the trends. It says legislation in the post-traumatic stress injury claims. That was passed, was it 2 years ago? Was it 3?
3 and 1.
3, Madam Mayor and council member, the presumptive illness was FY16, the end of FY16, the PTSI was FY19.
And so FY19. Is there can we tell if people have been using it, if it's increasing, if it's effective?
Madam Mayor and council members, that it's probably too new to tell. I will show you slides about how people are using the presumptive illness. The PTSI, it's too new to probably tell. We have claims. We have 11 PTSI claims right now.
Thank you.
And then you can see we have fewer due to police and fire. There are less insurance companies that are interested in our book of business, and that's impacting our costs. And medical costs are increasing. And when you see some global issue, the property insurance takes a hit as well, and we help pay that like others. This shows our self-insured retention history. We have been at that 500,000 level for a long time. With the recent changes, we are no longer, insurers are no longer fighting for us as they were in the past. And so it goes fairly steep. We did try to buy down that SIR. We looked at some options to buy down that. One quote we received brought it down to 1 million for general employees, 1.5 for police and fire. The premium alone was 1.25 million. That on top, we would have to pay for the injuries right now, that 1.3 that we talked about, plus the 1.25, it puts it, just prices it right out of our market. This talks about the big 3 cost drivers we're seeing over the last 5 days or 5 years. So excuse me there. The presumptive illness claims. You can see the bill passed in FY16. We've experienced 2 claims in FY17, 1 claim in 18, 1 claim this year. Reviewing nationwide cancer statistics, working with our actuary, we anticipate probably around the rate of 1 to 2 cancer claims, maybe every other year. So this is not going away, we don't believe. It just, if you look at statistics, that's where it's going to be. And so we will see this type of up and down, but you can see the level is around that 1 to 2 million, at least every other year. The PTSI bill passed in FY19, and we experienced 4 claims in 19 and 7 this year. We anticipate these numbers to continue to increase as the coverage is new for police and fire, and they'll get more comfortable filing those claims. And then we'll be able to see the impact of that. The purple shows the 2 severe injury claims we had in 16 and 17. Love to say those are anomalies. In the last 20 years, I don't recall any others like that, but they will happen periodically. And a higher SIR, we will have to be more responsible, have a larger responsibility for that. And this slide really shows the impact of that insurance. Currently, if you took all our claims, we have a total incurred. That means it's expected that we would have to pay $14.4 million for all claims on the books. The city's portion, due to our great insurance that we've had and low SIR, is only about $3 million. Our insurance company is going to end up paying about $11.5 million. We pay for that insurance under $200,000 a year. So yes, we had got a great deal. Now they need to recoup that costs, and they're still the best. We surveyed the market, and they were the only ones willing to touch us at a reasonable price point. The 4 presumptive illness claims that we currently have, the total incurred is $3.5 million. This is expensive. It's expensive what's occurring to us. The post-traumatic stress injury, 11 claims, just over 200,000, and the 2 catastrophic claims you can see at about 10 million. And here's what, this is a trend line of the last 18 years. So it shows the blue is where the property, slight increases over time, relatively flat. We have a great insurer and we're not seeing great increases. You can see the general liability, it's actually down. We have a great rate and we haven't had significant losses. The red is the workers' comp, and you can see over the past 5 years, steep uphill, and that's affecting the green, which is the combined rate. So considerations for FY21 and beyond, we're recommending maintaining fund balance to account for increases due to legislative changes, the general liability exposures, they're not going away, increasing self-insured retentions and the deductibles. We also recommend maintaining emphasis on prevention, mitigation, and cost control. Any questions? Thank you for your time. Sorry about the bad news.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Corey, another question then. You know, you did have a slide in the beginning about some of the things we're doing to control some of these costs. I guess I'm concerned that so many of these, of the claims that we're seeing come from training, and wonder what we're doing to ensure that our trainers, the people who conduct the training, are doing so in a way that reduces the risk.
We do data analysis, Mayor and council members, we do data analysis and we share that with, in this case, with fire and with police in those. We ensure that they know those claims. What we found in the past was an injury would happen. The statistics are over here, the injury happens, the trainer didn't get that. We meet with fire now and have a safety committee that we go to so that information is getting down there. We also implement, or they've implemented with some recommendations from Megan, that there's some stretching going on during that. And then we ask them regularly let's just think about those trainings, and they have decreased the incidence. It used to be higher and more costly. If you can believe that used to be higher. So
Do you know, just to follow up on that, have you looked at how our percentage of incidences, or however you look at it, compares to other similar cities?
Madam Mayor, that slide
With just the, sorry.
right there shows that we do talk with, it's Midwest Casualty. They actually look at that and they think fairly highly of our programs because we are low severity.
Even with the high number that we're seeing in police and fire?
Even with the high number of police and fire.
Okay.
It's the presumptive injuries. Those are the ones that are really influenced us. The two catastrophic, the presumptive, and the PTSI. The insurance company is looking at the legislative changes and saying Idaho in general, not just the city of Boise, is a place they no longer are quite as interested in insuring.
Are
So
we the blue square or the blue dot?
we are the blue dot. They're trying to push us into that blue square. We would love to be there. That's a target that they set for all of their insureds.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, one other question if I could. Given the changes are so recent, and I think it's safe to assume that the insurance industry responded proactively and really not based on case numbers, but presumptively what will happen. Is there something we could do either ourselves or jointly with the Association of Idaho Cities to really track these? And while this year we may be in this position and maybe we'll be here for a few years, if in fact those presumptions don't come about, could we push that down maybe quicker than the insurance industry would do it themselves based on their own presumptions if we were able to track the data more aggressively?
Madam Mayor, council member, absolutely. They're not reacting quite as much to just us. They're looking at what has happened. We're a little late to the game. Some other states have already been there, so they're seeing what's happened there. And I've talked with some risk managers in some other states. They're in a worse place than we are and having a very difficult time even getting insured for police and fire. But absolutely, we can continue to look at that and use all resources to say, hey, how can we get the presumptive down, and watch the PTSI to see is it making a positive change for the health of our employees.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, if I could follow up, I'd be more than willing to take this issue to the Association of Idaho Cities Board. It was a big topic of discussion as the legislation was being passed. And I think there's probably a lot of other cities who'd be interested in data collection. If we get it put together early, it might be easier than if we try to respond after the fact.
I appreciate that suggestion. I think working with Corey and Kathy, see if there's anything else we can provide in terms of assistance and information.
You bet.
That'd be great.
So I'll follow up with you and do that.
Thank you. Yes.
You bet. Thank you.
Madam
Thank you so much. Good to see you. You too, Megan. Okay, next up, exec.
We have no.
No. Oh, wow, we have 15 extra minutes.
So,
Okay,
wow.
all righty.
All right.
We will be back at 6. Bye, TJ. Bye, Patrick.
Hi.